morning, everybody. Today we will be joined by Mr. Weston Maugh. Did I pronounce it correctly?
You did. Yeah, it's a lot of silent letters.
Yeah, I got it right the first time. That's rare. That's rare. Oh, good morning, and how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Great. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for joining us. I've been watching your work on your Instagram page, and I like a lot of what I see there. Um, I've interviewed recently Clay Long, and we were talking about his stuff, his history, and the response putter and all that. And now he's on his own, and he's got a pretty nice line. I saw your line, and I thought maybe you'd be a good person to talk to.
Oh,
So why
he's a
don't
lo-
you start by giving us a little bit of your background and how you got to what you're doing today?
yeah. Just always been an avid golfer ever since my teenage years. Played in high school and just really took a fascination towards golf equipment in general. And I'm pretty old, so they actually still had drafting classes in high school. Not AutoCAD, not computer design. It was drafting, which is pencil and paper and rulers and stencils, and so that's kind of where I got my bug for designing stuff. And even in high school in my free time I was designing irons and golf clubs, and
Wow.
I didn't know if it was going to go anywhere, but it was something that I had interest in. And then you know 20 years after high school is done, I find myself actually designing golf equipment. And it really kind of happened just because I have a passion for it, and people wanted to see, some certain types of styles in golf equipment that wasn't really being produced at this time. So it was um, it was a cool little dare, and I kind of kicked things off from there.
Oh, great. And yeah, I'm from your school. I mean, I learned how to draft, letter, Leroy, ink. So I've done the whole gamut.
Yeah.
Now I use CAD, but I don't really, you know what I mean? It's yeah, it's actually there's actually an art to hand drafting, and I don't know. I think there's actually more advantageous to design with pencil and paper than it is to digitally. But,
Yeah, and one thing that I think kind of is different about me, say, than others is I come from an art background.
okay.
So, and I'm talking like fine art. So
Okay.
when it comes to drawing and doing portraits and still life and painting and things like that, um, I've got a knack for it. I guess I got a lot of that from my dad, who is a fine artist. Like that's his actual profession, and he does artwork. So been exposed to a lot of that, and did a lot myself. But didn't really pursue a career down that. So for me, understanding light and shadow, contour, um, symmetry, proportions, composition, all those things that you would learn in actual art school are things that are just a part of me and my design. So I try to make really, really beautiful things. And, um, I actually have a reason for pretty much wherever I put a certain line or a size or a curvature. All those things are taken into account.
Yeah, it's interesting you point that out because I had an architect design uh, an apartment on top of my mother's house,
Huh.
and yeah, so it turns out this guy is an artist. Beyond being the architect part was like that's what he did for a living, but he was an artist. And he also designed furniture.
That's cool.
So, again, it's the little details that kind of separate, like the carving and the molds and then
Yeah.
the Gothic stuff. It looked pretty cool. It's just a different way of, you have to have you gather a certain amount of appreciation for
Yeah,
that.
that's like Frank Lloyd Wright level. You're actually designing the furniture for the place that you've architected. So
Yeah,
that's really cool.
yeah, yeah. So, what was your first foray? Was it? Did you actually design something, or you? I mean, I see you retouch putters also. You re so.
Yeah, the first adventure was the first model of putter that I did. It's called the Highland putter. Um, it's an adaptation of the classic, Newport 2 style or Answer 2 style putter. And there's been a lot of iterations of the Answer style. I mean, hundreds, if not thousands, right? And everybody's got a different feel or different taste for what that shape should be. And there was some things from the early 90s when that putter shape kind of got hot from a milled perspective that I really liked. And I tried to pull some of my favorite aspects to it. Um, and so to get more particular around the design, smooth face putters, that's something that a lot of people aren't producing nowadays. It's really easy for a consumer to pick up a putter and see that it's milled when you have all those striations on the face and curved lines. Sometimes, if you don't see the technology, it's not really there. That's just kind of a consumer aspect.
Mhm.
So, but I stuck to smooth face. I felt like there's an advantage to having a face with no milling because it produces a high energy transfer to the golf ball. So I think about some of these great putters from old, like Ben Crenshaw or Brad Faxon or even Tiger. These putters didn't have any mill marks on the face, and they were able to be pretty darn good for some reason. And so I think there is something to that. Other aspects of the design is having a hosel that's set back from the face, so the neck doesn't line up with the top line. It's set, it's very asymmetric in its design. It doesn't flow with the rest of it and keep it proportional, but there is some technological advantage to it because it just opens up the view of the face a little bit more, providing you a little bit more of a horizontal visual cue to lining up your putters, um, and exposes the face slightly. It's not much, but it exposes it a little bit. And so just I like the way that hosel sits behind. And so more all of my traditional putters, your answer style, the hosel sits back. And that's very much the way, the original answer was designed. And I think there was purpose behind it. So that's another aspect to it. And then, just picking up on some of the advancements that have been found, like sole draft on a putter, where the sole actually slants up and away from the ball at address. And so when a player sets down a putter, because the shaft is in front of the face on these, there's offset on it, that dynamic causes a flat putter bottom to actually shut when you address the ball. And so having that slight sole draft with the shaft forward causes the putter to actually sit square, right on that leading edge. And so I didn't want a putter to shut when you set it up to a golf ball.
Yeah, yeah,
And so there's some of those things. And then other aspects, a lot of times people will make asymmetric proportions when it comes to the heel and the toes. A lot of times the heel portion of the bumper and the shoulder are tighter or thinner when compared to the toe. And there's some mechanical reasons that they do that. It's easier to move the center of gravity towards the center of the face. And I wanted a more symmetrical appearance where the toe and the heel are the same, while still trying to make sure that CG stays as close to center as possible. So there's a lot of aesthetic, but also a lot of mechanical benefits that are occurring, and even in a classically styled putter from 25 years ago that it kind of emulates.
yeah. I'm a fan, and that's the only part. But that's not the two. I'll use the Dale head, Scottsdale answer.
Yep.
I have an Austin. I have Newport one. I have Odyssey ones. I have everything that's a one. That's the Dale, the original Dale, is what I use. Um, but to your point with the actually John Ortega is a good friend of mine. Don't know if you know him, but John Ortega is John from John Byron, and
Mm.
they did the Dale head back when Ping lost the patent on it, or let the patent expired. And they were very successful with that. Byron Morgan went on to do. I think he just passed recently, and
Yep.
he was had his own little studio. I have I have two of theirs. One thing I noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong. See, I prefer one of the reasons I preferred the answer was because the shaft appeared to be leaning back. I don't know if that's the case or it's just my mind, but when it starts to look like there's offset built in, I start to get a little screwy. So I can't figure out how to line myself up because the face seems closed.
Uh-huh.
I think like I have a couple of Newports, right? Newport ones, obviously. Actually, I have. All right, let me be honest. I'm going to confess. I have about 50. I have about 55 putters. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. That's a confession we're going to get to. But it seems like the Newport, the answer, it's got the newer ones, the Dale Head,
Uh-huh.
and the Toulon Austin, right? They all seem to have that shaft. I don't know if it's the shaft, it's at the hosel or wherever that's creating me a slight shaft. The grip is it feels. I don't know. I never measure
Yeah.
any of that. I play it by feel, and I prefer. I seem to get a better roll. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
If I feel like the face is leading,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I think that's probably in part to how the sole is designed in relation to the hosel.
uh-huh,
And even if the neck is flush with the top line or even set back from the top line, um, the shaft offset is still going to be there, and that's essentially where the edge of the shaft meets up with the face. And typically, the answer style putters are one shaft offset, and
uh-huh,
um, and so if it's incorporating that style, and then in addition having that sole draft, where basically if you were to forcefully rest the putter head on the ground, a flat ground, it
uh-huh.
would tilt back. And
Okay, so
typically there's going to be,
okay.
2 degrees of sole draft on the putter. So yeah, if you forcefully held the putter head to the a flat ground, the shaft would lean back two
That
degrees.
that just explained it. So yeah, because it's
But
going to
it's,
incline.
you
It's
know,
going to
and
incline it.
I think it's probably been rediscovered over and over again, but the story that I'm familiar with is that Scotty Cameron had been creating his own line of putters, and he was trying to make one for Bernhard Langer. And Bernhard told him every time he sets it down, it gets shut. And he had to figure out how to understand the physics of having an offset shaft on a putter with a flat bottom and what he had to do with that. And ultimately it resulted in having 2 degrees of sole draft.
There
And
you go.
so the way it sets on the grass, it just sets square, even though it's not a flat sole, it's slanted. So I knew that was an aspect of putter making that needed to be incorporated, as I looked at how these putter designers were doing it. And it's in, all the putters I design.
See, that's a subtle thing that I would have never known, and I go crazy when I. So in other words, if it's flat to flat, it's gonna seem closed.
Yeah.
And I've taken it to people, you know, club repair guys no, these two putters are exactly the same. I don't know what you're talking about. I never checked the sole, so
Yeah.
they had me believing I was nuts.
You're not crazy. Um, I think there are a few putter designs where you can have a flat sole, but it's about where the shaft axis, intersects with the club head.
Hmm.
So if you do have a shaft that's maybe back, like the zero torque putters that are pretty popular now,
Hmm.
you can do a flat sole because that shaft is centered on the object itself. Um, if you did sole draft on that style of putter, then you would see the face just sit way open
Wow.
because the shaft is centered. So, it's about knowing what sole you need in relation to the shaft and where it's located.
Okay, perfect. Cool. So now what had me most interested was the rebirth of the 962Bs.
Yeah.
That looks cool. So I had a when the 962 first came out, I got a set from the Titleist rep, and they were cool. They had the cord grips, sensor core, the deep dynamical sensor core shafts, and they sat nicely. But the feel, I mean, the casting in in those days was kind of hard compared to what you can get today. Like you can get a nice cast club that feels almost like a forging. And I was playing at the time. I played Mizuno's, MP14s, I believe. Mizuno's a nice soft, nothing
Mhm.
feels like a Mizuno type of thing. And then you
True.
jump into this 962, and I don't know, the feedback wasn't the same. The ball, they played well, they sat nicely, but the quality of or technology for casting back then probably wasn't what it is today.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. The 962B is such a cool iron design because it at the time, accounting for the agronomy and what the tour players liked, it's this really small tour package of an iron. You could compare that iron to, almost any blade out there, and it's one of the shorter blade styles. I'd say in comparison today, its size is like unto the Ping Blueprint irons, which are very compact, very small, the blades. But from an older era, I actually thought that they resembled a lot of the boxiness and squareness of the McGregor um, Muirfield 20th
Okay.
anniversary ones. And so that type of short blade iron is kind of rare. I mean, there's not many that really embody what that is. And for me, I think it just creates a very uniquely centered CG when that club head starts to get reduced. The longer they get, the CG gets a little bit more towards the hosel. You can kind of engineer around that, but most engineers want a heel biased CG in irons to help people close it or you know um, help with the performance. But a lot of tour players or maybe old school players like a CG that's a little bit more centered. And so that was one thing I really want to embody. And when I actually bought a set of 962Bs. They'd always been on my radar and I'd owned sets in the past and I was like, I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to go. So I got them and I refurbished them. And then what kind of kicked it all off was I did the pin balance, right? So you set like a nail straight up and you balance the iron because it's not shafted or anything. You balance the head right on the nail to see where the CG actually sits in the iron. And I did it 3 through pitching wedge. And what struck me as very unique to this iron design was that when I balanced it, the nail would sit above the sixth groove, dead center in the face. That's to me is a very high CG, and
Yes.
most of the engineers today are trying to get a low CG to increase launch. But as my brain's kind of toiled with the idea of where the CG should be on irons, um, I've ultimately concluded I feel like irons need to have a higher CG. And if you want more launch, you can affect, launch with shaft, but more specifically with loft. Um, and if you want more launch, you can add more loft. And adding more loft is kind of a not something that the iron manufacturers are doing nowadays. I think the standard pitchy wedge is like 44 degrees. And, when I was playing golf back in the 90s, it was like 49, 48. And so it's now jumped up a whole club stronger. And you have to engineer clubs differently if you want a pitching wedge that's 4 degrees stronger to perform like a pitching wedge that was 48, right? And so I stick more towards traditional lofts because I feel like loft is loft, right? Sand wedges are still 56 degrees, and you're going to have to find gapping in there and find a pitching wedge that's going to align with the set. And whether you decide that your pitching wedge is 43 or 48, you're going to have the same lofts across the entire build, right?
Yeah,
Um, but the CG to me was really something intriguing. And when I saw it centered and high, I thought, this is pretty cool. And one of the things that I really considered about that, and this gets a little bit more technical, is in understanding drivers, there's a factor called the CG&A. It's where it's the perpendicular line that travels through the face at the point of the CG. So as you think of drivers, if you get a low center of gravity, Callaway came out with the Sub-Zero. The CG was below the CG&A. That's why they called it sub. Um, if you hit it below the CG&A, you get those thin, low risers off the driver, right? That spin. And if you hit it on the CG&A, then it starts to mitigate that spin and have more, energy transferred towards it. And then if you hit above it, gear effect takes place and it takes spin off the ball because of how it's counteracting it with the loft. And so where you strike a driver in relation to the CG is important, whether it's the toe or the heel or thin or high on the face. And that's what we would do back in the day when we really wanted a ball to knuckle through the wind. We'd hit it slightly higher on the face. And so as I thought about that impact on iron design, if you have a low center of gravity in an iron and you're hitting the CG&A or above it, you're taking spin off the ball. And it's going to be really hard to stop balls on the green if you're hitting above a CG&A or on it. But if you've got a high CGA and you're constantly hitting below it, it's like hitting it thin on the driver all the time. You're getting low risers that are spinning a lot. And that's actually something I noticed. And I think right now is an interesting time to propose a high CG iron because golf balls, they're getting harder and harder to spin. And, they in essence, people will even admit to that. The old golf balls, you could really work them. And now the golf balls today are so straight, they're hard to work. And I think that having an iron with a high CG may actually provide a little bit more workability. I've seen it. I went and played with the irons I redesigned, and they have a really great flight. I love it. They don't, coast up in the air. They really launch low, but at the same time, they're still spinning. And so it's really pretty awesome to see the control I'm getting out of that. But those were the aspects of the 962B that I found incredibly intriguing. The small package, the high centered CG, and being that those irons were designed perfectly for that era of the 90s, I feel like agronomy's changed. I feel like grass has gotten healthier, grass has gotten thicker, and we need a little bit more soul design to accommodate. And some of the feedback I got from people that do play the 962Bs was that the leading edges were very sharp, and that you could dig and you'd take big divots. I think if you're playing on hard packed dirt down in Texas, you're going to be fine. But, grass is so healthy now that it's really, playing that in Bermuda would be really brutal. You'd be pulling up carpet, right? And so
yeah,
I wanted to take that design and do a few things that consumers kept saying over and over again, which was, what if the 962B was forged? I mean, that was always the most common recommendation.
yes, yes.
And I'm
And that's
like,
because when the originals came out, uh, Titleist made a prototype for Davis Love III that was forged, and nobody could, nobody. Recently, I've seen pictures of this, you know, Phantom Club, but we were all like, why didn't they just forge this thing? And it was too much. It was the cost. I don't remember what the reasoning was, but you know,
yeah, business is business. At that time, I think, casting 431 stainless steel was a very common practice, and it was acceptable. Ping was doing a lot of castings, and maybe still does. But Titleist was doing a lot of castings, and forging was really only done by, Mizuno and maybe a few other element or irons within lines. Like, I think at the time TaylorMade was outsourcing, their tour irons to Mura, and they were doing like the 300 series or some of the other forged, tour style heads. And so the forgings were really coming out of Japan, and Titleist, just after the 962Bs, did adopt forging from Endo, which was, doing the 681 irons and the 690s, which were, highly regarded even still today. And they and they just released the 680s again. Um, so, forging has always been what people have felt is a superior manufacturing process for irons, and they provide better feel. And so I was like, this is a very logical step. And I'd always toyed like, what if somebody did this? And then I finally thought, well, what if I'm that somebody?
Right.
and I'd been saying that for years. Other people have been saying that for years. And finally I said, fine, I'll do it. And so I did it. And I've been able to, provide the same iron package as a 962B, but add more bounce to the sole, and still embody that low offset, compact design, and then offer it in a forged package. And I, I, I can't really take any credit for it. I'm just pointing and saying this is how it should be, because the iron was originally designed by Larry Bobka and his chief iron engineer, Peter, and they came up with the great design. And, so there's nothing really that I did except for kind of put together what everybody really wanted. And it's a very pure iron. Like, I think everyone's intuition was right. They're like, this is such a cool iron. I wish this was forged. I bet it'd feel great. Well, you're right. Like, it feels fantastic. It's one of the more pure irons that I've actually ever hit. And again, it's not due to me. It's because it's a great iron design. And two, you just use the right process to make it. And um, when I built it, I actually couldn't believe how good it felt. Um, I didn't put any wooden dowels in it for dampening. I didn't put any shaft dampening, Sensicore or anything like that. And it feels like that's happening in it. It's a very pure feeling iron, very soft. I was 100% surprised at how good it felt. And I played a lot of blades, so to feel the way this iron feels, like, I was shocked. I could not believe it.
Well, it's I mean, everybody's into guys that had them back when they were launched. Intuition was right. Why did they just forge this?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
play both surfaces. I mean, Bermuda, and now I'm in New York, so I'm on the bent circuit. I mean, up here I can take actually playing the Srick songs, right?
Yeah.
And those that play ZX7s, they have that double bounce at the bottom, and they perform as well on bent as they do on Bermuda and Pospalum and whatever, and it just glides through. So I was wondering, if that what kind of what did you do with the bounce that changed it? I
I
know
didn't.
the leading edge dug on the 962, the original 962Bs. The leading edge was kind of knifey.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. When it came to 962Bs, I mean, they were cast and then hand formed, right? They don't come out of the casting perfectly. So they had to get in the hands of somebody who was going to grind and smooth and polish it down. And the characteristic of that iron that, and a lot of iron designers doing it, it's personally not a thing that I prefer, and I don't know why players might prefer that, or maybe they're just used to it. But most irons have a belly on the leading edge. And when you set it down, it just curves. There's no straightness to it. I don't know why manufacturers put that in there. Maybe some people prefer it, but I'd say the majority of irons produced today have a significant amount of belly. So you just, if you held the iron up and you're looking at the offset, you can just see that the leading edge is curved. And to me, it messes with my eyes because I see straight grooves and then curved belly. And so, um, one of the things I wanted to alter to the original 962B was to take that belly out. That iron was made with it too. It's very slight, but I took the 962B heads to a grinding wheel and reformed that leading edge by adding a pre-worn leading edge and lining up the bottom of that face with the groove, the bottom groove, so it's parallel. And to me, it creates a beautiful and square iron that becomes really easy to line up. And so that was one of the aspects to the iron that I did change, was to create a straighter leading edge. And and because of that, I can add the pre-worn leading edge, and I wanted to have significantly more bounce and help. And that pre-worn leading edge really does help it. Even on the prototypes, there's not as much pre-worn leading edge as I would like. They were able to craft the leading edge correctly, keep it straight, but I want even more to increase the ability to come out of the turf faster. So that is one aspect. It'll be a little bit cleaner and more visual on the production run, and also have more benefit coming out of the turf. But that was one aspect. I didn't want to change the triple grind sole that was there, a very thin tour style sole. But I just wanted more bounce and more dynamic out of it. And so adding that pre-worn leading edge and adding more bounce on the sole has been, I think, a cool addition to the iron design.
And how many sets do you have out on the market right now?
There's only been 3 prototype sets made.
Oh, okay.
So I had offered, to some of the followers that I have on Instagram, hey, if you'd like to be part of the prototype process, it's going to cost money. And so some people jumped in, and but because they jumped in, I was able to test some design aspects of it. So they got to choose the different logos or different material. I made a raw set to test. I had chrome, and so I was able to do a lot of testing in the prototyping. And granted, they aren't perfect, but they're really close to what I wanted to offer, and I felt so confident in the production that I've now opened it up for a made to order reservation. And so anybody that gets in before July 20th, they'll be able to have that reservation. And so I'm producing those iron sets, and I think they're going to be done around October, and I'll be shipping those out to the buyers.
Oh, excellent, excellent. No, no, I mean it has a cult following.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, again, we go back with the loft issues. Most players that of that era. So my pitching wedge on the Mizuno was a 50 degree,
Mm-hmm.
but King Cobra, the King Cobras came out, and they had a 44 degree pitching wedge. And everybody, these guys, yeah, I'm hitting my pitching wedge 150 yards. And I'm like, really? We were selling, I was selling about 10 to 15, we're a small pro shop, 10 to 15 sets a week. Just as soon as
Yeah.
I could get them, they were gone. And, it wasn't the shot making low handicap golfer. It was,
Right. Right.
there was a guy
Yeah.
winning it. Yeah.
It's an interesting paradigm that's occurring. Everybody wants to have a better performing iron. And I understand why the manufacturers are doing it, because the regular golfer wants to hit a 180-yard 7-iron like the pros. But the I think the issue with it is you're getting golf balls, that are getting struck and tossed into the air, and it's really hard to hold greens with very, very strong lofted low CG clubs. Um, I think I think loft is loft. You still have to assemble, some 12 clubs between 22 degrees and 60 degrees. And whatever, variation you decide to do, it's up to you. But the way the manufacturers have pushed things, you now have wedges or wedge divisions or wedge companies that start at 60. And guess what? They're starting to make 44-degree wedges.
Right.
And it's like, well, why are they doing that? Well, because you're going to have to match the set that has a 40-degree pitching wedge, right? And so you keep doing that. But what's really interesting is, as good as you can design a wedge, there's still blades. A wedge is a blade. It's got a lot of mass at the bottom. It's got a thin, surface in the back and up on the toe. Um, in some aspects, they can be forgiving if designed a certain way, but for the most part, you can get more forgiveness out of an iron design than, say, a wedge design. But it's like the OEMs are pushing more and more wedges, and a lot of people have 4, maybe even 5 wedges in a bag. It's kind of crazy. But you put that many wedges in and you're playing with a half set of blades, and then you got a performance, players enjoyment club or something. And so I think there's a huge disconnect there. And some of the manufacturers are making more forgiving wedges that are like more cavity back style. Cleveland's done a lot of that. But to me, it's like, let's just standardize pitching wedge. Um, it's going to defeat a lot of the marketing out there about how your 7-iron's longer than the competitor. But if you standardize, then it really starts to bring things back into perspective, what I think are beneficial. Because in reality, they're still making gap wedges. You go to the OEMs and you find a matching gap wedge, and it turns out it's 48 degrees, but it has a G on it instead of a P. And it's like, okay, okay. But, these companies, they want to perform better than last year. They want to be longer. They want to be straighter. There's all this drive to do that. And I think they've done some amazing things with engineering. But my goodness, like, the next decade, pitching wedges are going to be in the 30-degree range. And I don't see how that's a benefit. So,
Well, I mean, Bryce has got these weird lofts on his clubs, right? But Hogan, the remake of the Hogan company, they had it right. Just put the loft on the bottom and forget about the number, right? And now we have this category of players distance irons. So now you have a hybrid category of guys who are good players who want to hit longer, want to hit, not that they're hitting it longer, they want the number on the bottom to go further, right? And to your point about the wedges, like, so I have a set of Mizuno Blades 241s, but I also have a set of Srixons, both 785 and ZX7.
uh-huh.
So I get 4 through A, right? And then there's no Srixon wedges available in the United States. I think that's because they own Cleveland and they expect you to buy. Well, I was able to get the sand wedge in Japan. And so I have a 51 and a 57, right? So I go out with those 2 wedges and I'm scoring a lot better because I don't have the confusion of so many options. Follow me? So now I could just take the 51, make it go shorter, or, it's a 6-degree gap and I think I can close. I don't know, but I'm playing better because I don't see all these clubs in that. It's just my. It seems like it's popular in Japan because it's 57, 51 pitching wedge. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, proper gapping is, I think, the most critical thing. And it's pretty wild because as lofts have gotten stronger, pitching wedge, even on players' irons, I think are around 46 now. Which it's fine, but you still have to find the gap there, and it actually forces these wedge divisions to have like 100 SKUs, right? Because you want different grinds on all your wedges, but then you got to have different lofts. So now you've got like 2 to 3 different grinds for each loft, and in Vokey in particular, because they have so many different pitching wedges that start at so many different ranges through all their sets of irons. You've got your you're 44 degree, you're 46, you're 48, you're 50, you're 52, you're 54, you're 56, you're 58, you're 60. That right there freaks me out. Like, because people are like, are you going to do wedges? And I was like, no, never. I don't want to have 100 SKUs and deal with bending and trying
Nine
to
categories.
recontour necks so that people get the look they want, but also the grind they want and the loft they want. That's why Voki has like 100 SKUs. Like, there's no way I could even, compete from just a small manufacturing perspective to produce that much versatility that people would want. And that frightens me. I won't touch wedges with a 40-foot pole.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you remember Ernie Vaderson.
I haven't come
He
across
did
that name.
he did the original Snake Eyes wedges.
Oh.
Then Goldsmith bought them out and all that. But the original Snake Eyes wedges had a grind, had just enough heel relief to where, you know, you could open and close it comfortably and have it sit, and I would keep. What I do now is I buy they were forged by Smith and Wesson, the
Yep.
original ones. They were so. When I see the EV stamp on the heel on the hosel, I'm sorry, I'll buy it. 10, 15 bucks, and I got fresh set of grooves every time I go out, and I have that grind, the grind that and it seems to work on all types of different turfs. And to this day, I've been trying to get somebody to do that on other wedges, and I just don't. Nobody's been able to, you know.
It's
But
yeah.
they're looking at that V groove, the V grind, and they're it's getting closer to that type of, you know what I mean, tiger grind, where you have that heel relief that provides, um, the versatility to be. I just bought an RTZ wedge with
Oh yeah.
I can't remember what grind it was, but it seems to offer the versatility on a 58. That's the one I want to be able to screw around with.
Yep. No, that's yeah. Wedges are so dynamic. And I think they're awesome. I think they can be incredibly versatile, one of the best tools in the bag. But yeah, just from a manufacturing perspective, it's a really killer category. Um, and so I leave that to the big guys. They've got the capital to do all that. But those categories have to keep expanding as those iron lofts get stronger and stronger, and that to me is a unique issue to have when it could be avoided. Um, Not to say we don't need more wedges, but I just think that most bags can have two to three, and you're going to be okay if the irons are lofted in a way that accommodate that. So
Yeah, I think that you know when you try to eliminate a lot of these SKUs, SKUs, excuse,
yep.
um, a lot of that should be custom. You know, I mean, you're having to carry inventory to match M grind, G grind. I mean, that's for like the heavy hitters. That's not for
Yeah.
a boutique like a boutique shop like yourself, or Clay who's doing it. It's not. That's not. I don't think it's feasible.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some people out there like Joe Kwok out of the Bay Area. He does custom ground wedges, and I think he's got a great edge of the market, being able to offer those custom grinds. But it's like a whole new skill set, and then it's having the right equipment to do it the right way. Um, and so it would just be really hard for me to do the things that I do and then incorporate that entirely new product offering. And
Well, I
yeah.
mean, first of all, you can't be all things to all people, right? So it's the first thing. From a business standpoint, when you start to diverge from what you're good at and try to explore stuff like that, I don't know if you can see. I always thought that if I can't be the best at the business I'm in, or I can't be,
Mhm.
you know, amongst the top 5 or 10, and I'm not giving it up. And if Joe Kwok found that niche, and then there's name guys like Bob Vokey, just on
Mhm.
name alone, he's gonna move a lot of wedges, and I don't think there's any. I don't know. I'm not gonna speak for you, but my personal opinion, it's not gonna make any sense to try to go up against or
Yeah.
penetrate a market that's not, this doesn't make sense.
And honestly, like, what I like about putters is that you don't necessarily have to be the best. There's a lot of boutique putter makers out there. I think if anybody gets the best badge, it's probably Odyssey. It's the most played putter on the PGA Tour. They probably capture the most wins annually. I know TaylorMade is really starting to get up there with the Spider as well. I mean, those two putter companies alone probably take up 80% of the wins on tour and usage. So, but I think it's around offering something unique and different. And, the way I do it's not hard, so to speak, but it's also a lot of these putter makers don't do, which is, hand stamping a putter and being able to have a complete kind of garage customization experience. And it's been really fun to offer that, to get a putter stamped the way somebody wants. It's a real kind of tour experience, and I feel like it's a high quality product that would compete in that area of the hand stamp putters that are being sold by Scotty or anybody else maybe on like the Ping PLD side. So that's what I'm really happy sitting in that lane. Currently offering irons and putters. I don't think I'm gonna actually. I can tell you right now, I am not going to venture outside these two categories.
Right.
I do have plans to design a very unique to me and unique to the market blade design. That is something that I'm really excited about because I want to be able to put my name on something versus kind of reinvigorating an iron design from the past. Um, so that's definitely in the plans to have a more original design on the irons. Um, and then from the putter perspective, I'm really excited to expand into other different shapes. More blade styles, more mallet styles, but I won't be getting into any multi-material designs, inserts, or anything. I'm really just going to stay in my lane, which is
Yeah.
a solid piece of steel CNC'd to the design that I'm hoping to achieve. So, but yeah, it's creating something new is really hard nowadays, and I think even if you take like Lab Putters, who's really gaining a lot of notoriety on tour, but also in the retail market. They're doing incredibly well. They're, but from a design perspective, they're one of the more unique and say original designs, even though the concept itself of a center shafted putter isn't necessarily new. And even, having a shaft axis being set behind the face, that's not necessarily new. And, Odyssey had the toe up design or the backstroke, I think, where the shaft came in from behind. I mean, there's a lot of different iterations that were very similar to what's being achieved, but from a design perspective, you know, it's somewhat unique. I think that's the most original thing that's come out as of late, right? But everything else is just a replay.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you even think of some of the really cool iron designs. You could easily Photoshop the badging right out and put some badging from another company in. You'd be like, yeah, that looks like the iron that was designed 10 years ago by so and so or by them. So the originality of look and design is actually a really hard thing to do. And, so I may get flack for, somebody saying, well, you just copied the 962B. Well, that was actually the intention, right? I wasn't trying to skirt around it. I'm
You
telling you,
were you're not you weren't pulling a Costco.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
Um, because that it's just a unique little project that people had always wanted. Um, but my goal is to still create cool designs, and maybe they've been out there already, but it's going to be my little twist on it, and hopefully I can produce some really cool stuff. And that's kind of the whole idea, just produce cool stuff. And obviously they work, so that's a good thing. But
So,
yeah, irons and putters, I really like this lane, and I am not gonna move out of it.
so one of the back in '97, I believe, it was down in Orlando, and I met Michael Magaman, and he's the founder of Odyssey. So Faldo had just won the Masters with the Rossi two,
Oh,
and they're throwing this huge Super Bowl party down there, and I go in there, and a bunch of young guys. I mean, we were once all young, right? Back then. So, you know, lo and behold, they came out with this nice concept, and they were the hottest thing since sliced cheese. And Callaway opened their wallet and said, do you see that down the line for you? I mean, if somebody came to you and said, hey,
I, and that's honestly kind of the plan, right? Like that's the dream, to be
like
honest.
with the right backing, you could really do some serious,
Right.
yeah.
And because I've got a lot more locked up in here on how I'd like to execute putter making and putter design and things like that. And right now I have to bootstrap everything. And there's some liberty to it, but there's some stress and restrictions. And if an OEM came by and said, "We would actually really like to have you on the team and do this," I would say yes before they finished the sentence, right?
Right.
Like, and so that's because I think there's a lot of potential there, to do some amazing stuff. And, you know, if any OEM did, I would definitely, highly consider the opportunity to do that, because it would be, I mean, that'd be really, really cool.
Free you
So
up. It would free you up to be creative.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it would. I mean, because right now, like, I work, my regular job in software, and then I'm doing the putter business, and so I'm burning the candle at both ends, trying to balance family life and work. And having an opportunity like that would create a lot more balance in my life, but also create an opportunity to expand and experiment and do things that would be even cooler from a product perspective. I don't imagine that will come by as an opportunity. Most of these companies are quite set, and I can list them off. Obviously, the heritage of Scotty Cameron and Titleist is going to be something that carries on for decades. Um, and TaylorMade just invested in Olson Putters, who's kind of doing what that same path that I would love to follow. Um, there are other OEMs that don't have, say, a set putter maker designer like Cobra or Strixon, Cleveland, or Mizuno, and so maybe the door could be opened up there. But um, you know, if it comes, that would be amazing. But I'm certainly not counting on it.
Well, you're not holding your breath. You're not holding
No, no,
yeah.
no, not at all. So
It's
in the
like
meantime, I'm just gonna keep capturing
you know
market
what you're
share.
doing.
So you either
That's
you can take me and not have me dig into your market share,
it.
or just see what happens. So.
Yeah. Well, unless you have anything else to add, Wes, it's been a pleasure on my part.
Oh, thank you for having me. No, I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I think it was cool to dig into a little bit more of the technicalities of it, and understanding, and also the business side, because
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah. That's
But
what it is.
no,
Yeah.
I appreciate your time, and yeah, I will keep staring off into the horizon, and consider new putter designs and new iron projects. So that's my path at the moment.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Weston. Thank you for giving me your time. And I know, like you said, you're burning it on both ends, and you got things to do, people to see, and I really appreciate you coming on. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay.